Alright, so now that our rocket ship is rendered out, we can go into Nuke and put this together. So I'm just going to read my files. And home, desktop, temp. Okay, now I have asteroid belt, background, boulder, explosion, planet 1, rockets, and smoke. I also have my planet cam, I have my perspective. Okay, so if I go into perspective, you'll see here's my original 180 to 220, but because I rendered these out as a sequence, they came in right here. Okay, so you have to be careful when you render your stuff out, because if I just left it as render layer, it should render it into the correct render layer, but because we also have multiple cameras, it's going to overwrite those. So I have to make sure I do an underscore and then right click and then also insert camera name. Okay. And if I, just for fun, let's say I erased that, you'll see that it without that, it'll put it inside the front folder. Alright, so you just have to look around if you didn't put that in there as to where it's going to put your stuff. Alright, so I didn't specify, so I'm just going to grab all of my stuff here and open it. And I'm going to hit L after I highlight them all. That way they're nice and organized. And we'll put these in order first, and then we can go through and start to tweak them. So if we set this to input, I'm also going to click in the background and hit S. And I know that my sequence here is 1 to 300, which is perfect. My format, I'm going to make sure this is set to HD, half HD 960 by 540. If it's not here, I can choose the root, or I can make a new one and type in 960 by 540 and just give it a name. Either way, I need to get that in there. Okay. Alright, so let's look and see what we have here. We have our background, which is just the stars. Then we have the asteroid belt. We have some boulders we can't really see right now because they're just not visible. Same thing with the explosion. Here's our planet. Here's the rockets, which I spelled wrong. And there's the smoke. Again, we can't see these because they just are not visible in the scene yet. As I go forward, you can see there's the smoke. Okay. So let's go to that 180, 190-ish, about there. About 203 on mine is where I'm seeing some of those explosions. Okay. Now in this one, my background didn't render out that far, so I'm just going to scoot back to 192. There we go, and now I can see that. Alright, so I know the order. The background is going to be rendered on the very bottom, and then this is going to be on the top, right? Okay, so I'm going to grab this one and hit merge, and then just use the A here and the B here, and preview it, and you can see that I see the stars and I see my little meteors, asteroid belt things. Okay, and then I'm going to have the planet mixed in here on top of that, so I'm going to merge, and then the B for this is going to go there. I'll hit 1 and I can see the planet. And then let's see what else. Okay, now we didn't really render anything out as far as masks that have the rockets and the smoke interacting with the explosions and the boulders, but we're far enough away that it's not going to matter. Okay, so in this, don't be too concerned about getting the order right. Right away. You can always test it and see. So I'm just going to add in my rockets here first and preview that, and I can see that the rockets are on top of the planet. If I rewind, oops, you can see that they are on top of it. Okay, if I got this order wrong, the rockets will be behind it and that wouldn't work. Okay, oops. And I'm just hitting down here Shift X to switch between the A and B. Alright, so now I'm going to add my smoke, merge that on top, and preview it, and you can see that the smoke is now on top of this. And the reason we did the smoke on top is because we needed to have that alpha channel. So if I preview this and hit A, you can see how the rockets are being cut out of there. So we can still see the rockets through the smoke because we have them cut out. Alright, so now let's go down here some more. And we're going to do the same thing down here. We're going to add the boulders first. Then we're going to add the explosion. There we go. And I'm going to just pull this up a little bit. And there's a little explosion starting. Okay. Alright, so that should be good as far as just the layout of this is all set up. If we just skim through this real quick, asteroid belt is our A, background is the B. Okay, that way the asteroid belt is on top of the background. The planet is our A, and the asteroid belt and background merge is our B. And the planet's on top of that. The rockets are on top of that. The smoke is on top of that. The boulders are on top of that, and then the explosion is on top of that. Okay, so then by the time we get to the end, everything's lined up. Now it still doesn't look like a nice little composite yet. We still have to add some stuff. There should be maybe some glowing from here. Maybe these meteors in the background should be, or the asteroid belt in the background should be a little bit dimmer. The planet just seems a little bit too uniform. Okay, so let's adjust some of those things. So we'll start at the very top of this. And here's our stars. So let's add a glow to these. So I'm just going to go to glow. And I'm just going to take my brightness up some. Now I can really see the stars kind of glowing, and it just gives it just that starry quality to it. If it's too much, I can take the brightness down. I could take the size down. Okay, and you can see the size down really makes those stars kind of pop a little bit more. Again, I can play with the brightness. I could also, if I wanted to keep that halo that was there, I think that was about 15. I'll take the brightness up. I could adjust the tolerance, so only certain ones will glow. Okay, if I take this off, there's no tolerance, they're all glowing. If I add just a little bit, then only certain ones will glow. There we go. So that doesn't look too bad. I can click on glow and hit D and just test it out and see if I like it. I think I'm going to do that. Smaller size, less brightness. There we go. That looks good. Okay. So now I have those. So let's go to the asteroid belt. And I'm going to pull this just off to the side. Okay. Now as I add stuff, it's going to add it in this chain. I don't like that. I'd rather add it above it. Okay. I'd rather add it above and then link the very bottom chain into it. And what I mean by that is if I hit G to add a grade, I don't want the grade to be like this. I want it to be like this. Okay, it's just easier to read if I have it linked up like that. Alright, so on this grade, I can adjust the multiply of this, and you can see how I can pull those asteroids down into something which is a little bit easier to see without it kind of like blowing out the rest of this. I also pull my grade down a little bit. There we go. So now it looks like they're really far off in the distance, nice and soft. Speaking of soft, maybe they'd be a little bit defocused. Okay, so we could also click on this and add a defocus node. And I'm going to pull all these up. Now the hotkey is Control. If I hit Control and I grab any node, everything above it will move. Okay. And I can just, it's already softened it some. I'll turn it off, turn it back on. You can see how it just softened those a little bit. Okay, so that's good. I could also tint them too, if I decided to. I'm just going to pull this up, pull that up, add another grade, and just turn these off so I can just adjusting the blue. And I just want to see what it's going to look like. I just color those a little bit, just like that. And then this like yellowy, greeny tone to them. And it looks kind of neat. Just kind of separates it a little bit more. Okay, so let's just Scoot that. All right, there we go. Now as we get down here in this area, it's going to be a little bit trickier to get the stuff to line up correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold control and just pull this whole thing up. See, now any adjustments I had here will just go into this chain. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to adjust the look of the planet. I want this side here to be a bit more desaturated and a bit darker, I think. Maybe this part will be darker. We'll see which one looks best. Okay. Also, the edge is pretty crisp. I think I want to soften the edge a little bit. Maybe even give the planet a little bit of a glow. All right. So what we need to do is, if I just added a grade to this and I just start adjusting it, it's going to adjust it uniformly. Okay. And the same thing if I added like a saturation node, it adjusts the saturation uniformly. All right. So I need to create a mask first. Now, if I click on this and I hit A, you'll see that we do have an alpha channel here. So one of the cool things about Nuke is that we can use already existing footage to create an alpha and then use that alpha in other places. All right. So I'm going to go to the planet here, and if it helps you, I can copy it and just paste it. That way it's a separate thing and it's not tied into the chain, because sometimes it can just get confusing looking at that whole mess together. All right. So I'm going to take this planet and I'm going to add a defocus node. Okay, so I'm just going to defocus this, and I don't care about the coloration, I'm caring about the alpha. So I'm going to hit A, and I'm just going to defocus it. Okay, so you can see that this gets defocused. All right, and it's a pretty good transition from black into white. All right, so what I can do is I have this. I can just copy this defocus and apply it to that. Okay, I'll hit A again. You'll see that the entire thing gets defocused. Now I don't care about this defocusing everything. I'm just using this for the alpha. So if I come up here to the channels and I say alpha, you'll see that just the alpha channel is getting blurred. All right, but then when I merge this, you'll see that there's no effect there. All right, so if I scoot this up a little bit and I add a grade, and I start adjusting, let's say the, I wanted to go multiply, there we go. The multiply here, I can come down to my mask and say, use the alpha as the mask. And you'll see that we now have this coloration. I could also invert this so that now you'll see that the other side of this is a bit darker. Oops. Let me disable, re-enable, and you can see the result. If I need more, I can go to my defocus some more and just bump that up a little bit more, and that will, oops, when you view this, it'll pull that a little bit further in. Okay. Now, if I'm not liking the way defocus is working, I can delete the defocus, and I can add in here an erode filter or blur. And what the erode is going to do is it allows me to push or pull that mask and then blur it. So there's a 200 pixel blur on the alpha, something like that. And then I can just switch back to this, turn the alpha off, oops, switch back to that. And I can re-enable, disable this just to see if I like the way it's looking. Let's set this. And again, if I invert it, you'll see what's happening with that. Just want that to be a little bit more. I think I got to adjust my erode to pull that in some more. There we go. Okay. And I can even lessen my blur. Yeah, you can see the size of the blur right now is just too big. Alright, so let's see how this all tying together. So I think I like it that way better. I made this a negative. It seems like it turned out a little bit nicer as far as how that drop-off is working. I can even take and multiply it to negatives. Yeah, the multiply doesn't seem to do anything in this now that we've adjusted. It's doing something slight, but not much. Alright, so let's see what it looks like before and after. Alright, it definitely has an effect on it. Scoot that up. I can probably add another grade in here. Take it down again, and then remask it again and invert it. And you'll see that it darkens that effect even more. So here it is without it, and there it is with it. So you can see the effect that we're having on that whole thing. Alright, so it's pretty cool that we can just do that kind of stuff. I was trying to get it all in one, but didn't want to go, so we'll just do it in two. No big deal. Alright, now let's do the same thing with saturation. So I'm just going to click here, tab, saturation. And then we'll just take the saturation down, and then use our mask of the alpha, and invert it. Okay, now we're bumping into this, so I'm just going to hold Control and just drag that merge up some. Alright, so there's what we have so far. Now again, I can soften the edge of the planet, I can give it a glow. Let's go here. And I'm just going to say all of them. Oops. That's the wrong one. Now this erode is affecting the alpha too. RGB. Okay, so you can see how it's not doing exactly what I want it to do, causing some weird stuff to be happening. All right. So what's happening here, let's look at this. So we have this image, we've eroded that to get this alpha, we've added a grade to adjust some of the coloring, we've added another grade to get some of the coloring, we've desaturated the edges, and now we're trying to merge that on top, but we want to soften the edge. Okay. Now it has an alpha channel, but if I go in here and I pre-multiply this, you'll see that we're getting maybe too much transparency right here. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to use, delete that pre-multiply, I want to use this image here. I want to use this alpha channel to cut it out, but I want to use this other alpha channel to do all my colorations. Okay. So what I can do is a couple different things. One, I can copy this alpha channel, bring it down here, and then adjust it some more. Okay, so if I use a copy node, so I just hit K for copy, and I say I want to copy the alpha from here, and I want to paste it in here. Okay, so then my next branch is going to be from there. I'm going to hit Control and just scoot this over some. And I'm going to use Control again to pull this out. There we go. Alright, so now if we go here and we look at this, you'll see that our edge is very sharp. Before it was not. We're actually getting like some of these weird things right there. So now what I can do is I can adjust my alpha. Now I can do my erode blur. Okay, and looking at the alpha channel, there we go. I start to blur this, you'll see that these edge pixels are starting to blur. There we go. And so now when it merges on top of this guy, now that edge is just going to be a bit softer. Let's zoom in. You can see the color correction here. I'll also do a pre-multiply just to verify that it is cutting it out. Yep, and it's cutting it out. I think I'm going to take this blur up a bit more. Let's go look at the alpha. Yeah, I don't think we're getting enough erosion here. Let's pull that. There we go. So now it's a bit softer. Okay, so that's working good there. We can add a glow to this now. Glow. Control, drag it up. And again, we can play with our tolerance so it only glows in a certain spot. We can adjust our radius. We can adjust the brightness. And we can actually even do an effect only, so you see just the effect. Let's take the tolerance off. Let me adjust this filter here. Dodging was the best. Doing a good job of blurring it. Look at the 1 and see how it's kind of pixelated. 133 is obviously smoother. Yeah, something like that maybe. Okay, let me take the effect off, or the effects only off so we can see it. There we go. So we have this nice little glow on the planet. Okay, we can go further. We could actually add a halo to this and all that, but I don't want to get too in-depth with it. Okay, so let's look at the process of this again. So we read the planet in, we eroded the alpha, we graded it, and saturated it just so we can get some coloration on the edge. And then we copied the original alpha into here, and then we eroded that alpha just to give some softening to the edge. We pre-multiplied to cut it out, and we added a slight glow to it. And then we merged it into our chain. Okay. Now let's go down here to our rockets. And the rockets could do some brightening. They're kind of dim. So I'm just going to add a grade node to this. Use control to drag it up. Make sure we're not butting into anything. I think I'm just going to scoot it up a little bit more to give me some room. And I'm just going to pull the multiply up on those rockets just so they have a little bit more detail to them. Okay. And again, I could, oops, not lift. I could play with these and give the rockets a little coloration if I needed to, but I like the fact that they're gray. All right, so that's fine there. Those are good. Now we'll go to the smoke. Let's use our control and drag this up. All right, so here's our smoke. I want to add some glow to these orange parts here. Okay, if I go to the alpha, you'll see that everything is lit. So if I went in here and added a glow, you'll see that the orange parts are mostly glowing, but the gray parts are also glowing. So this is where the tolerance comes in handy, because we can adjust the tolerance so it's just reading the bright parts of the image and glowing from there. Okay, and you can kind of see that a bit more by me emphasizing it. Okay, play with these until I get something that looks cool. Turn it off, turn it on. Definitely looks cool with just that brightness on. Alright. Alright, the scene's really starting to read a lot better now. Let's go with the boulders here. I'm going to change this back to global, just so I can get past my 193 issue. And I'm just going to disable, because my image isn't showing here, I'm just going to disable this. There you go, disable that. And where were we at? Boulders. There we go. Okay. So there's the boulders. Okay, not a whole lot of detail there, but we can add a grade. Brighten them up a little bit. go. Not a whole lot of detail because we're so far away from them. And then here's our explosion. And again, a lot of grade. We can control what that looks like. Now here's the cool part too, is that let's say I don't like the way that the boulders are gray, is that I can go to this grade and I could, just reviewing this, and I could, come on. Alright, the boulder's not updating, so I'm going to delete that and regrade it. There we go. So I'm going to put this in the red. Just red and green. I'm trying to get this in the yellow range. There's other tools I could use too. I like to use the grade. Alright, I do want to play with just the red. Okay, that's taking me to blue, that's taking me to red. There we go. So we'll leave it there. Now I could add another grade in here and adjust some of the other coloring and eventually get it to a yellowy color. Okay. And then what I could do is add a glow. Okay, lower the glow value. Tolerance in there. There we go. And so now what this is going to do is that once I add this on top, you'll see that it's now going to look like that's a little bit of fireball explosion stuff happening. Okay. And I'm not really liking this one. That's why it wasn't working before, so I was adjusting the wrong one. Grade. There we go. I don't want to destroy it and get it totally black. I just want this to be like that. Okay, and now that I'm looking at the whole picture together, I think I want to come to my planet. Let's make sure we don't bump into anyone. I'll go up to my planet here, and I think I want to add just a final grade right in about here, and just adjust some of my coloration of this. Okay, and then come back down to this, and adjust the grade on this guy. So now it's just to see what that looks like. Let's rewind it a little bit and hit play. And by using the images we already have as masks, then everything's just going to be automatically updating. So when we update our cameras, we update any of our other stuff, it'll just automatically update. Yeah, that looks pretty neat. I'll hit L again, and then rewind it, and then hit play. You can see this in somewhat real time. Cool. Alright, so that's pretty much it. All we gotta do is our tidying up here, make sure these are all nice and neat. Oh, got a little bump here, let's scoot that up. I just need to go through and re-render this guy out so he's finished rendering. He just locked up, but I still want to get the lecture out. I can add my vignette. Add a merge, and this is going to be our B, and I'm going to add a dot node. That's a dot node. And that'll be our A also, and then as our mask we're going to add a roto, so we just hit O or hit tab and type roto, and drag this mask into the roto and just draw our shape. Like I said before, keep the circle in the center kind of small, and then pull out these little feathery handles. I'm going to try to keep this circle actually right about where our action is happening. And keep these pretty close to the edge. I don't want any of those to be inside the edge. I want it to be right on the edge. Okay, so now as we go into that, I'm going to change this merge here to a multiply. I'm going to say invert. Close that. Frame it. There we go. It's much nicer having a little vignette there to darken it and really focus our attention on what's happening right here. Okay, so then we'll just add a right node. And I'll make a new folder inside my images from Nuke. And then this will be asteroid belt 001 cam1 dot pound dot TIF. Okay, and if you don't want the alpha channel, just uncheck the alpha channel. That'll save you a little bit of headache when you go in there, or just change it to RGB, and then render that out. Bam. Then take it in After Effects, make it into a QuickTime, and you're good. Okay. Now the cool thing about doing this, like I said before, is that once this is all set up, let me save it here and say, oops, missile launch. There we go. Is that we can take this whole chain and copy it, paste it, and for any other cameras that we have, all we have to do is just go reload the new footage. Okay. So for this one, I'll just double click it, go to the folder, and let's say this is my planet cam. I just grab the background for the planet cam, and go to my asteroid belt, go to my planet cam, go to my asteroid belt, and all the stuff is just going to update. So I don't have to worry about fixing really anything, unless it's a very specific thing. Come on. A specific thing to that camera that we're seeing otherwise. You know, you wouldn't want to just render it out, you know, willy-nilly. You want to double check it. There might be some adjustments, some different things you're seeing from that camera you weren't seeing from, you know, the other camera. Bubbles and explosions. Okay, so now from this angle, just lay 180. This is how far this thing goes. I can't see the planet. The planet's just not in here because there's nothing to see. But I do see the rockets. I do see the smoke trails. I do see these glows. I see this thing back here. You know, my roto is in this spot, so maybe I'd want to get rid of the roto, or at least reposition the roto so now it's kind of centered more in the line of what's happening. I also want to be careful I wasn't paying attention, and I set a keyframe on my roto. So I'm going to go to this thing, click that, go to this thing where my old keyframe was, and just hit this keyframe minus. There we go. Okay. There we go. Or I maybe want to go back to my glow here for my smoke. And maybe I want to either, brighten it up, or I want to pull it down. Brighter looks kind of neat. Okay, or maybe my rockets, I'm just not liking the grade on it, so I can adjust that grade and tweak it some. Okay, and then I'll have another one down here at the very, very bottom, which would be cam 2, and then I would render that guy out and bring that in After Effects, put them together, front to back, and then there we go. We have our composite all set and ready to go. All right, so that's your Sprites instancing video.